This is a painting I recently finished. This is my girlfriend's dog. His name's Gooby. And I'm going to show you how to varnish this painting. So this picture of Gooby was actually taken in the backyard on a blanket by the plants on the pool deck. This is a couple years ago and I finished it this year. So the first thing about varnishing a painting is that you want to clear the surface of any lint, fuzz, hair, any particulates that have built up while it's been hanging out. There he goes. He's barking at the turtle. So the best way to do that is to use a wipe rather than a paper towel. So paper towel I have here, and paper towels, when they rip or touch any surface, he's going for the turtle. You get him. He's trying to get the turtle. He's gonna have to go in the house because he was trying to get the turtle. So we'll get you after the video. Is when they hit any surface that has any kind of texture, which oil paint does. Even though this is a thinner paint, it still has texture. That lint of the paper towel, the particulate is going to rip off and be in your painting while you're varnishing. So what I use, which is something that I learned from, I work in the manufacturing environment. This is something that we order in the manufacturing environment, and you can order it from home on Amazon. These are Berkshire wipes. So Berkshires, they don't tear. It's like an athletic material almost, and they don't particulate, which is why they work really well for clean rooms in manufacturing. So this is nice because you can wipe the surface of your painting and get all of that buildup off from it hanging out in your studio. Sometimes I won't varnish for a couple months until a painting's done. And this is gonna give you a really clean surface to varnish. And it's not going to damage your painting either. There's always a certain grit to paper, even if you're using printer paper. That could be used for fine sanding. So if you're going to use something rough like a paper towel, it can have a sanding effect. After you go ahead and get all of the little pieces of lint that have built up on your painting off of it, you can go ahead and start varnishing. So here's the materials I'm going to be using. You need some type of little container to throw your varnish in. You're going to be pouring from this. Here we have just a little used yogurt container, ceramic. We save these at the house, so they work great for painting. Here is our main tool we're going to be using, which is Gamvar Gloss Varnish, which is made by Gamblin. Now this, I use a high gloss varnish. You really get the most out of your oil paintings. If you use a flat finish, you're really not going to see the effects of the paint when it was wet. So what high gloss varnish does is it takes your painting from when it was wet and what it looked like when you actually applied that paint, and it restores it to that color, the same finish. So most people like how their paint looks when it hits the canvas. Once it takes a couple weeks to dry, it does have this dry look to it. Now, some painters like that look, but if you're looking for a gloss look, I would highly recommend a gloss varnish, and it would be a clear one. A yellow one over time is going to yellow once it ages. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my varnish and just a drop. That's really all you're going to need, is a couple drops for this. A little drop goes a long way. I like to use a 2-inch brush. This is just like a trim brush if you're painting your home. There's really not a need to use super expensive brushes for varnishing. You could get away with a $10 brush. What you want to do is you want to start in the middle. You want to work outwards because that's going to give you a really good idea of how much you have. If you start on the corners and you brush in, you're going to glop a big pile of it in the middle. So I'm just going to start with one drop in the middle of the painting. I'm going to take my Berkshire and I'm going to wipe off my brush just to get any excess hairs, fuzz, particulates out of it. I'm going to start going in an X pattern outwards. And I'm going to start to see those colors come alive. The motion that I go is really like up, down, across, and then an X through it. And I just start building out. So it looks like I'm getting to just the edge here. So I'm going to add a little bit more, like one drop here, and see how far I can get with that. And a good way to tell is to kind of put it in the light, and you can really see where it starts to thin out. Less is more. You really don't want to put a lot of this, because if you put a lot, you're going to have to start wiping it off. If you do have to wipe it off, go ahead and use one of these Berkshires. If you can't afford a pack of Berkshires, they're pretty pricey. You can get like some athletic t-shirts, real cheap ones off Amazon, and cut them. Just get a t-shirt that's not going to particulate, and then you can just kind of cut it up in squares and toss it when you're done with it. So, oh, I almost grabbed my coffee to pour on the painting. So I'm gonna go on the outside a little, couple drops here, couple drops by the paws, and then by the bushes here. I'm gonna go ahead and start moving outwards again. It's really cool because you start to see all of these colors come back to life. Blacks turn to like a cloudy gray, and then when you start to varnish it, you see it in that high gloss black, how it started, which is really exciting. Same thing with greens. Greens get pretty gray. One thing I want to mention is you want to make sure you do this outdoors because there are fumes involved with varnish, and you want to stage your painting in an area outside where it can sit about 48 hours. Garage is great, but if it's super dusty, you might just want to take a trash bag and tape it around the edges. Now don't tape it to the front because you're obviously going to interfere with your paint and your drying process, but you can kind of just hang it over. That's why I like to use a thicker stretcher bar so I can tape something to the back of it and protect the area. Another option is to put it up against a wall and then just put a bag around it and drape it over so no particulates or wind gets in there. As you can see, I'm getting a couple particulates just because I'm outside. I'm sort of picking those up with the brush and then wiping them on the Berkshire. All right, let's do a couple more drops here. Once you feel like you've evenly distributed the paint, what you can start doing is what I do when I stain canvas, which is going vertical and horizontal. So I'm gonna go up and down on the canvas, and then I'm gonna start going horizontally on the canvas, and that's really going to ensure that everything is on there evenly. Based off the lighting, where we're going to need some. So I can see in this lower area I have a little bit more varnish, so I'm going to start spreading that a bit more. Down here on the blanket, sort of start targeting some areas. With the right lighting, when you hang this up, this thing is going to pop. With this high gloss varnish, these colors are just gonna, if you have it in a room and it's lit, it's just gonna be the center of attention. Put a couple drops more on the top bushes. Little hair there. Sometimes you can even use tweezers to get, if you kind of scoop a little hair up, you can use a tweezer to get it. Usually the brush will work though. If you have a strong brush, it'll pull those right up. And at the end of the day, you're not always going to get it perfect. There's just going to be little impurities hanging out in your painting, but that's okay. Someone I was really inspired by when I first started painting was Jean-Michel Basquiat, and he would always have his finished paintings, you know, after working them in the studio, particulates in them, paintbrush hairs. Andy Warhol had a lot of those, footsteps across the canvas because he'd lay them out and let them dry in his studio. And you know, those paintings with like those signatures of knowing that it was his, those are some of his highest selling paintings these days. So that is our finished high gloss varnished painting. I'm going to let this dry for about 2 days, but you can see how much more those colors are popping. So you know, the detail in the eye, it was really kind of washed out when it dried, and now you can really see that reflection of the cloud in Gooby's eye. So now that this is varnished, we're gonna let it dry. I'm gonna put on a second coat. It's gonna look exactly like this though, as it does when it's wet. And then this is gonna get framed. So I'll go ahead and throw in the framed version of it so you can see what it looks like with some good lighting to hang on the wall at home. One other thing I want to mention is to, just sustain your brushes so you don't have to buy them all the time. The only solvents I use in the studio are odorless mineral spirits, and I don't even use them in the studio, I use them outside. The only reason is to keep my brushes clean. So this brush specifically for staining and for varnishing, that's the only brush I clean. I don't clean my actual paint brushes because there's really no reason to. I have, oh, there's Gooby again. He wants to see this part. Speaking of solvent-free paint, so this is what I use in the studio. This is Geneva paints. So this really only has clove oil and pigment. So clove oil, it smells kind of like fall. It's a really nice smell. And then the actual pigment, which is the powder, super clean paint, but that's so that you don't have to have any ventilation in your studio, which is really nice, because if you use this stuff to thin out your paint with the pigment, you're gonna have to have some sort of ventilation system, some hood inside of your studio, which can get really pricey. So the best thing is to just use solvent-free paint, and this is the best on the market. This is Geneva, Mark Carter. You can find his videos online. He has great instruction, but I highly recommend his paints. That's what this whole piece was used, is with Geneva paints. As you can see, all of these colors were just mixed from these 5 colors sitting here. The only one I don't have out here right now is white. Okay, so one idea that you can utilize in your studio is a vertical easel. And that's what you can place your canvas on to limit the amount of dust that builds up. They're traditional easels that are angled that you see at a lot of art stores or that you buy off Amazon. That angle allows all this dust that's floating around in your room to go ahead and land on your painting, and with wet paint it's really hard to get it out of there, so you usually just varnish over that. But in this case, what I created here is a simple slat wall. This is black plywood, and then I put some slats on there just for style, but then I have steel bars, and then these magnets here are what get screwed into the back of the canvases. So you can have a couple bars on there, and really any size painting, as you see, that'll fit a 16 by 20. This will fit larger pieces. And if that doesn't work, then you just move your steel bars over. So what I have on the back on the wood, I actually have magnets screwed in so that I can take this bar and put it anywhere I want. They can go vertical, horizontal, and it allows you to have this canvas here without that dust building up. One thing I'll also mention is that this easel allows so much more space. So if you're working in something like a bedroom and you want to start painting, you don't have to have a studio, a specific space in the home for it. You can do it in a bedroom because really this just takes up the length of the wall. And it's kind of cool because as you're working on it, it's like a living art piece in your room that you get to see every day and watch it come together. All right, well that's it. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop it in the comments on varnishing paintings, and I'd be happy to help. Thanks.